help us with this one.
Yeah, 490 something.
Oh, it is? 490s.
What verse are we on, Pastor?
What's that?
What chapter?
What verse?
We're around verse 41, verse 41, I believe. I think that's where we broke off discussion last week.
496.
Around verse 41.
17.
Did they get my $3?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Okay. So let's begin by having somebody read verses 41 to 47. 41 to 47.
And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him. He was but a youth, and ruddy, and of fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee unto mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and unto the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel.
Okay, so here we see this conflict developing between Goliath and David. The two armies are on opposing hills, and there's a valley between them. They're coming closer to one another, but not quite together yet. They can hear each other, and they're swapping words. Okay, shout out to me some things that Goliath says and some things that David says as they're coming together in those ways.
The Goliath said, "Am I a dog?"
Okay, am I a dog?
Belittling David that, you know, you come to beat a dog.
Yeah, yeah. What does that mean when he says, "Am I a dog"?
That he's small. And David, you know, has come to beat somebody that's little.
Okay, yeah. You think I'm an ordinary beast?
Yes.
Right? Like something that a kid could handle, the young man could handle, and Goliath's trying to show him that he's much more than that by his question. Yeah. Interesting fact, Israelites did not keep dogs. They did not keep dogs as pets or as work animals like other cultures did. They regarded dogs as unclean. Okay? Philistines, however, did keep dogs. Okay, they were a dog culture. In fact, I think if you dig down there in Gaza, well, it's where the fighting is going on actually right now. When they've come across some Philistine burials down there, they find dogs in the burials. That would never be the case in an Israelite burial. They would not do that because dogs were unclean to them. What else are they yelling at each other? What's going on here?
Goliath said, "Come to me and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air."
Okay, flesh to the birds. What does he mean? He's going to kill him. There's more than that going on with this statement. It was considered a great shame to be left unburied. Okay, that was considered a shameful treatment of the body in these cultures. And so Goliath is telling him, you're going to have the worst end. You're going to your carcass is going to lay out there, and the vultures are going to come down and pick it apart. Now, not every culture thinks that way. There's a culture in India where when someone dies, they take them and they put them out on this, I don't know if it's a hilltop or an altar or whatever, and they leave them there, and the vultures know they're supposed to come and eat them. And they regard that as an honorable form of burial. So different cultures do different things, don't they? Go ahead.
Did the people in Israel just put the dead body in one place for a short time, and then later on it was taken to a permanent grave?
So closer to New Testament times, we see this. They would often have a cave or a space that they would hollow out, and you would go into that, and there would be a bench, and they would put the body on that bench, and they would leave it there for about a year. And then behind the bench there was another place where the bones would be collected. So they come back a year later, the body would have been cleaned off by the decay process, and they would have taken those bones and put them together in that special space for holding the bones.
Just a smaller box, wasn't it, after it was just bones?
Well, yeah, once the critters have done their job, right? The bacteria, etc., you can fit that body in a much smaller space.
Yeah.
They have, in fact, they would have, for special people who paid the money, obviously, they would have something called an ossuary. It was a bone box. And it's about as long as this is the longest bone in your body, right here. They would make that about that long, and then everything else would fit in around it. That's how they would bury it. So, but earlier, they probably are just digging a hole and putting people in it. Okay? They probably weren't quite as elaborate, but they liked to use caves if they could afford one. Abraham buys a cave, for example, when he buries Sarah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
read that, that's the reason I asked.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was surprised that in Germany, you have your burial place for a certain time and they sell it to somebody else.
You know, we don't want to get too far off track here, right? We want to get back. I'll make this comment, and then we're going to go back to what David and Goliath are saying to each other. When I was a teenager, I dug graves. That was a line of work that I and my brother got into, because that was what was available in our community.
My buddy did it in the day.
Yeah, and sometimes when you dig in a spot that you think there's nothing there, you find things. And then the graveyard was, these, graves go back to the 1700s, they were reburying in the spots that were open. So that happens. Let's move on. What are David and Goliath saying to each other across the valley
David
here?
says, "Come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts."
Okay, in the name of the Lord. Showing his devotion as a young man, he knows the Lord and he knows the way of the Lord, and he comes in that name. What does Goliath say? He's got a religious statement in here too. Did you see it?
It says where he delivered him the dead into his hand. The Lord delivered him to him in the day. It says here, it says, "Deliver you unto my hand."
Yes, so that's an expression meaning I'm going to defeat you.
Okay. Is that
But Goliath says something about his religious beliefs, his religious ideas.
He cursed David by his God.
He's cursing David by his God. Cursing by his gods. Yeah, that's what he's doing. So you see the difference in their religious beliefs comes right out as they're confronting each other and the way that they will go. Any other things that leaped out at you that were a highlight to you? Yeah, Rob.
David tells Goliath he's going to leave him for the birds.
Okay, he's going to turn it around. In fact, he's going to take his head, isn't he? The head's coming off.
So as they're meeting, they're sort of talking to each other the dozens.
Yeah, this is what we call trash talk, right? If you're in sports, sometimes they put a microphone on the football players, and you can hear the things they're saying to each other. When they're lined up across that way there, it looks all peaceful and calm, doesn't it, when the camera's way back? But they're insulting each other, they're just saying all kinds of things to try to intimidate the other guy. And David and Goliath are engaged in this salty talk here with one another as they go. So we see that contrast, but we also see the faith, the religious beliefs of both men come right to the surface. Okay? As they are engaging with one another. And David, as a young man, he's probably under 20, okay, that's the fighting age in Israel. He's a younger man, and yet he's filled with faith, and he's filled with confidence that God is going to see him through this experience, this encounter with Goliath. Let's have somebody read 48 and 49.
When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Who makes the first move?
David.
Not David.
Philistine.
Okay, the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David. Now, it says he arose, it makes you sound like maybe he sat down at some point, right? He's resting or something as they're trading these insults. And then he decides he's going to act, and he gets up and he comes on. It's probably a moment where he's got his shield bearer with him, and the shield bearer is handing things off to him, getting him ready for this encounter. And yet he does something, well, we'll talk about it here in a second, that's a mistake. He makes a mistake in this encounter. Verse 49, David put his hand into his bag and took out a stone. And we read about those stones earlier. He looks for these smooth stones. Okay? Smooth stones that you can put in your sling.
Are they small or big?
They wouldn't have been terribly big. In fact, they find them when they dig around some battlegrounds over there. They find like lead shot that they pull out of the earth. That these were bullets that they used as slingers. And I'm not sure what the velocity is that they can get to, but it is deadly force when they swing that thing around and get it going. And what happens when the stone hits Goliath?
And then sinks into his head.
It sinks into his forehead. It sinks into his forehead. And here we're encountering what was probably a mistake by Goliath.
Got too close.
Well,
He didn't have his helmet on.
he didn't have his helmet on. He didn't have his helmet on. We see this there's artwork done by the Greeks. And what they would do is when they were in a resting situation and they weren't in the battle line, they would take their helmet and they push it back on their forehead. And their forehead is exposed and it's kind of sitting to the back of their head, you know, instead of having that thing down, because it would have come down like this, you know, a guard across the brow here, and then a nose bar that would come down over the nose. And they probably got tired of wearing that thing. I can imagine that would be irritating to have on a lot. And so he's probably got it propped up on his head. His forehead is exposed. Was David a good shot?
Evidently.
Oh my heavens.
He had lots of time to practice.
He had lots of time to practice? Yeah, what do you do out there in the field when the sheep are just eating?
You practice.
Right? You practice that. You practice that skill. Just as they would have archers who would move in a group and come up and shoot down arrows on the guys that were coming in with the heavy armor, they would do the same with slingers. We see this like in Assyrian reliefs. You can see a band of slingers, they're all going like this, getting ready to shoot their whatever they're using, whether it's a metal piece or a rock, as David does here. Why did it have to be smooth?
Easier to hold in a sling.
Okay, because it needs to, the sling needs to let go of it, doesn't it? If it's not a good smooth stone, you can't be accurate with it, all right? You won't get the right trajectory. Somebody had a hand up over
I was
here.
gonna say down, I'm not sure what country it is, they have a thing where they fling balls around and it goes after the animal's legs, I think.
Oh, yeah, yes, in South America.
Yeah, South America.
Yeah, bolos, I think they're called.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
They will throw that and they'll tie up the animal's feet.
Yeah.
And they'd catch them that way.
Sounds like a similar thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Except for
it's
except
a
for
swinging motion like this
Yeah,
over the head.
Plus there's, I think, 2 on each hand.
Yeah, what do they do out west?
Lasso.
Lasso, okay, yeah, it's the same kind of a skill, same kind of a motion. And then you'd have to toss that to your target and get your target.
It said it slung it. Can we just assume that he had a pouch to put it in, or he just winged it and slung it?
When you sling something, you...
Didn't say he had a sling to put the rock in,
Okay,
to sling it.
yeah.
So the assumption is he had that, right?
So yes. When you use the word slung implies using a sling.
Okay. Not that you slung it somewhere.
Now, it's not throwing it. It's not a throw by hand. So the pouch, imagine like a little square piece of leather or something like that, and then there would be strings coming off of that. And then you'd grip it here toward the end, and you'd rest that stone in the pouch, and then you'd start swinging it. I should have looked up to see what kind of velocities they can get off of these things. They're deadly, as the story shows it. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, that's very similar to the regular slingshot.
like a slingshot.
Because Jerry uses a slingshot a lot.
Yes.
And he uses little round bearings instead of
Okay,
stones.
yes, yeah. They don't have to be terribly big. It's all about penetration, isn't it? Yeah, penetrating the target. So yeah, this is the technology and the technique.
I believe the slingshot, you could get more accurate faster with the slingshot rather than a sling.
Yeah, a slingshot you're drawn back like this,
Yes.
and then you can line up with your eye, this, you've got to know when to let go of it, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'd let go of 2 of the strings and hold on to the other 2. So however he fixed that in his fingers and his hand, he would let go, and the rock would fly, but the slingshot would stay with it.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah,
They still do that in the Middle East today.
I wouldn't be
They
surprised.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of weapons, and this is David's choice of weapon here. Notice David doesn't let him get too close, nor does David get too close to him when they engage in this fight. But when it comes time for David to kill him, I think did it say that he ran to him? Oh yeah, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. So he had been holding back. He knows better than to get too close. All right? And he has the advantage with that kind of a weapon. Let's have somebody read then verses 50 to 54. 50 to 54.
David prevailed over the Philistine with his sling and his stone, to smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in his hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him and cut off his head therefore. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled.
2 more.
Oh, 2 more? I always do that. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until they came to the valley of the gate of Achorah. And the wounded of the Philistines fled down by the way of Shachamaim unto the Garth and unto the Erechim. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent.
Okay, so here are the Philistines are so surprised at David's sudden victory, and the Israelites are so, well, probably equally surprised. They probably thought David was a dead man going out there. That the Philistines are ready to leave, and the Israelites are ready to attack, aren't they? And the Philistines run all the way home. Okay? Gath and Ekron are 2 of the main cities of Philistia. So what they're doing is they're going in behind the city walls so that they will be secure. Okay? And the Israelites are routing them. It's a downhill run, and probably a lot of them got killed in that flight. Okay? That's usually a bad situation to be in when you're running from your enemy, because of the way the armor is made for you to be in front of your enemy and not running from them. So, comments or questions about David's victory here and what it means? He finds the sword, draws it out. I'll bet it was a really big sword, because Goliath was a big guy. The sword continues to show up in the book of Samuel. It'll come up later. We'll see that it's mentioned again.
Pastor, is there a reason he took his head to Jerusalem? Is there a reason that he took the head of Goliath to Jerusalem?
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know.
You know why you would take that head up there?
Prove he did it.
Warning.
Prove he did it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is proof sure.
That makes sense.
This is proof sure that Goliath is dead. Okay, as he takes that up there, takes it up to Jerusalem. Now that's also an interesting thought because of this. Is Israel dwelling in Jerusalem at this time? They're not. They're not. Who's in Jerusalem? Do we know? It's a group called the Jebusites. The Jebusites, it's a Canaanite group, still occupies Jerusalem there, right in the middle of Israel. Israel has not overcome all of this, okay? When David becomes king, guess what happens to the Jebusites? They're gone. They're gone. So maybe he was bringing that head up there to say, hey there.
This is what's gonna happen to you.
This is going to happen to you. Yeah.
But that happened.
Heads up, right?
Back in those days, then the king or queen would tell their soldiers, bring me his head in a basket, and they would bring it.
Yeah, those are things that were done. To us, that sounds really crude and barbaric. And
But that was common back then.
but those things were done. Those things were done. We're going to see in the next chapter that some other things were done. Well, I'll just save that. Let's carry on. I'm going to read for a little bit. I'm going to read, let's see, 55 to 58. We're going to end the chapter. As soon as Saul saw David go out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, who's a relative of Saul's, by the way, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as your soul lives, O king, I do not know. And the king said, inquire whose son the boy is. And as soon as David returned from striking down the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, whose son are you, young man? And David answered, I am the son of your servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. So they had met earlier, right? David went in and played the harp for Saul. He was an armor bearer for Saul, but Saul, for whatever reason, doesn't remember him. Probably because just the sheer number of people that Saul is encountering and dealing with. David might have come up and served at the palace for a time and then was perhaps released and went home and served his family. There was, at this time in Israel, you had compulsory duty where you were expected to serve the central authority for a time and then you would have time off from it. So this is why David is probably not recognized by Saul. But notice how he asks the question, whose son is this? Whose son is this? It's a political question. What tribe is he from? How strong is this family? What kind of influence are they going to have? Okay? As David accomplishes this remarkable thing. Any questions or comments before we get into chapter 18? We're going to skip a little bit and jump into another section of 18.
Goliath had a spear, didn't he?
Yes.
So he could throw something too.
Yes, spears in that time were generally used for thrusting. Okay?
Like this.
Yeah, you'd have it under your arm or whatever, you'd have your shield on, and you'd be going like this with it. Goliath's outfitted for being in that battle line. Okay, he's outfitted for being in that close combat with other soldiers. David is outfitted as a skirmisher to fight from a distance. He has a weapon that strikes from a distance.
Well, I don't know why they doubted him, because, you know, he's far away. I think I'd have went with him.
You think?
Yeah.
You
can stand back behind a rock and throw rocks.
You think if the Vegas betting they would have gone with David, you think?
I think so.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Why does David win?
God was on his side.
God was on his side. Okay. God is on his side. And because he fulfills the Lord's word just as he describes it, doesn't it? It's the work of God that's in his life that sets David apart.
Well, Goliath was probably so, seeing this little guy and so confident of his size and strength that he wasn't really.
Overconfident.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was overconfident.
that's that dog question. Am I a dog? Is that how you think of me? I'm a monster compared to you.
He hadn't run into anybody that would stand back and throw things at him.
Maybe not. Maybe not. And for whatever reason, he doesn't fear David, does he?
No.
He's going into battle half-dressed. we might say, not covered properly.
His helmet, yeah.
Yeah, that helmet is not in position. Yeah, quite an experience. This changes David's life. Earlier we learned how Jonathan immediately appreciated David. We're going to now learn about the king's response to David. Earlier, chapter 16, we learned that Saul loved David. It uses the word loved, okay, as David served him. After David defeated Goliath, things began to change. Go to chapter 18. Someone read verses 6 through 9. 6 through 9.
As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very angry, and the same displeased him. He said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day on.
Interesting developments. Why does Saul begin to doubt David? Remember, he loved him at first, appreciated him. He sent him into battle, was willing to equip him with his own armor. Why are things changing?
People gave David more credit than Saul got.
They're giving David more credit. They're giving David more credit. What's that? Jealousy. Jealousy is going on. Yeah.
You know, you run into that, Pastor, even working jobs. Some people don't want to work with someone that's pretty smart.
Okay.
They're afraid, I guess.
Intimidated.
Yeah.
Okay. Intimidation.
Fear that he's a lesser man, or how a lesser man can be better than
Yeah.
the richer man that has more
Yeah.
on his side, so he's turning people against him.
Yeah. Politics is all about perception, isn't it? And people are looking at David and they're saying, wow.
Plus he was young.
And ruddy,
Yes.
right? These are the ladies singing, right? As he goes out. They're impressed with David, and the shine is off of Saul. The shine is off of Saul. David's the new guy. He's the up-and-coming guy. Saul's the incumbent, right? To use some of our political languages. Saul has advantages as the incumbent, but David's got the momentum here, doesn't he?
Had David been anointed already by now?
David's already been anointed. This is Doreen's question. We still haven't seen whether Saul knows this or not, but he's thinking, look at what it says there in verse 8. They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands, and what more can he have but the kingdom? But the kingdom. He sees this as his political senses are in full bloom here. He sees this happening. He sees David on the rise and himself in decline. He was having trouble, right? He was not able to defeat the Philistines earlier, and now David routs them with the army. So quite a change of events here. Look at verse 9. Saul eyed David from that day on. I'm watching you.
Is this when he decided he might want to kill him?
Say again.
Is this when he decided he might want to kill him?
We're going to see what happens next. Why is David so popular? He's popular, of course, because of the
Goliath.
victory over Goliath.
But he was a common person, just a shepherd.
He was a common person. He was a
People could
shepherd
relate to
boy.
him. People could relate to him.
Okay, maybe they could relate to him. They could identify with him.
Plus he was handsome.
He was handsome. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
He was
Man
young.
after God's own heart.
What's that?
The man after God's own heart.
He's a man after God's own heart. He goes forth in the name of the Lord. And that might have also made David attractive as a leader to Israel. Okay? These are all factors in David's sudden popularity. as he shines forth and Saul is going into retreat here. Verses 10 and 11.
The next day a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. And Saul had his spear in his hand, and Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall, but David evaded him twice.
How have things changed? He's trying to kill him, right? He is trying to kill him, pin him to the wall. That doesn't sound good at all.
It's the only way of getting rid of your competition.
Yeah. And a king could do those things, couldn't he? He could be those ways. He had an army on his side. Saul has a standing army. They wouldn't have had that earlier in Israel's history, but Saul's got it.
In that case, he was above the law.
He's putting himself above the law. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And apparently he's looking at David. He's threatened by David, and yet he's not so afraid of Jesse and his family. Right? Because if Saul kills David, the way that things were back then, there would have been a blood feud.
But that's the smallest tribe.
But, well, they're not the smallest tribe, but the family of Jesse is unimportant. Judah's actually the largest tribe. Judah's the largest tribe. Saul is in the smallest tribe, the Benjaminites. Okay? So Saul's at a point where he thinks he could get away with this, just murder David outright. He's at that point. What role is God playing in this? What role is God playing
He's
here?
protecting David.
He's protecting David. What's he doing with Saul?
Letting him go.
Letting him go? It's more than just letting him go.
Putting him in his place, maybe?
We'll put the harmful spirit on him.
He sends a spirit, doesn't he?
A harmful spirit.
A harmful spirit from the Lord. The Lord is actively making things harder and worse for Saul while he is lifting up David.
Are you saying that the Lord is putting some of these bad thoughts in Saul's mind?
Well, I don't know that the Lord is putting the bad thoughts in, but he sent him this, what does it say?
Harmful spirit.
Harmful spirit.
Like illnesses to him or ill thoughts.
And it could be a mental illness.
It's kind of a bad state of mind, isn't it? The jealousy and the fear and the rage that's coming with all of that is what makes Saul throw that spear. But God is the one kind of pushing this and making this happen. It's not the usual picture we have of God, is it?
Yeah, but Saul could have got over that. He could have said, no, I'm not, he could have welcomed David.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think, could he have said no and welcomed David? Kind of like, Judas? He could have said no, but not really. I mean,
there's a line there, isn't there, in the lives of people where you can see them going either way in life. They could be doing good, or they could be doing evil. We see examples later in Saul's life where he realizes that David is not trying to push him out of the kingdom. Where those are coming up. And Saul is behaves cordially at those moments with David. So yes, there's that opportunity, as there is for all of us, to be right-minded about things. But Saul is going with his anger here, isn't he? He's going with his fear.
but wasn't he more or less put into a position to do that? I mean, kind of like I said, Judas, somebody had to do it.
The Lord's nudging him this way, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Lord is nudging Saul this direction.
So in essence, he's following God.
Well,
He has free will.
the Lord gave up on Saul earlier. That's what Samuel tells Saul. You're not going to have the kingdom. God's already made that decision. And now God is at play between the two, bringing about his purpose. So I would probably say it that way. But Saul could have been a different ruler, couldn't he? He could have stuck with the Lord in his way.
Well, then would David have risen to that level then?
Maybe David would have been a leader in his military or something like that. But Saul abandons the way of the Lord. He abandons his way. The politics was always at play in Saul. That's constantly there. I see a couple different hands up. We're going to go with Jim and then come back to
He stopped
Alvin.
the war.
Say again?
He stopped the war with the Philistines because of what David did.
Saul stopped the war?
Killed a guy, he stopped the war, and they ran.
Well, I think if the Israelites could have, they would have pushed the Philistines right out into the ocean.
Yeah.
I think they would have. But when they get back to Ekron and Gath and get behind the walls, they don't have that opportunity, and the battle stops. Alvin?
But Saul could have welcomed David. And Saul already knew that he wasn't going to leave, that someone else was going to, correct?
Samuel's told him that. Samuel's warned him that someone was going to replace him.
Then he's kind of turning against what he's already been told.
Yeah. You know, Saul might have gracefully retired.
Yeah.
And gone back to the farm.
Right.
Okay?
But he didn't want to.
Like George Washington. Okay? That's the beauty of wonder of George Washington. He could have been king. He would have had that kind of support. And Washington says, I've done 2 terms, I'm going back to the farm. And that saves America, folks. That rescues us.
But he knew the Bible too. He prayed twice a day.
Sure. He was a good man. And you see that in his decision, don't you? You see that in that decision.
I said, because plus David had the Lord and youth on his side, because he evaded him twice.
Yeah. Wouldn't you think that the first time that David might have left, you know what I mean? But he sticks around. You wonder how that worked. You know? Oh, there's a spear next to me. You know? Should I keep playing the lyre here or not?
Well, age may have been a factor in it too.
Okay.
Because Saul was not a young person anymore. And when you get older, you can't do a lot of stuff that you used to be able to do.
Okay.
And David was young, and he could do pretty much anything.
Yeah, David's not ready to retire. Saul probably should have.
Yes.
At this point. But he wants to stay king. So these are common conflicts that happen in these kingdoms. Verses 12 to 16. Verses 12 to 16. Someone read for us.
Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them.
Okay. So here is David's continuing success. Why is David successful?
God's on his side.
God's on his side. It's the blessing of God, isn't it? The blessing of God. He's talented. He's handsome. He's accomplished. He's got all of those things. You know what? Saul had all those things. Saul had all those things early in his career. But when Saul forsook the way of the Lord said, I'm going to raise somebody else up. Okay? Walk with the Lord is the message here. Walk with the Lord. Don't turn from his ways. Even if you see somebody else doing better than you. Okay? And that'll happen.
We all have different blessings.
Say again?
We all have different blessings.
We have different blessings. And let that person prosper. It's all right.
Give him his blessing. I mean, if someone's doing better than you, good for him.
Yes. Learn to be happy for other people.
Yes.
That's how it should be.
If you can learn that skill, it's a life-changing skill.
It makes life a lot easier.
Learn to be happy with other people. And walk in the way of the Lord. Saul sends David out. He's a commander over a larger body of troops there. He's apparently just trying to get David away from him. It's probably on his mind all the time. It's upsetting him. Let's see what happens next year. Verses 17 to 19. Someone read for us.
Then Saul said to David, "Here's my eldest daughter, Merab. I will give her to you for a wife. Only be valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles." For Saul thought, "Let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him." And David said to Saul, "Who am I, and who are my relatives, my father's clan in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king?" But at that time, when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, she was given to Adriel, the Metholite, for a wife.
Okay. So Saul seems to be following, I don't know if he'd read Sun Tzu or one of those Chinese wise guys that says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Right? That's one of those sayings, and they use that in the business world these days, right? This is some of the attitude. Bring that war attitude in.
He's trying to bring David into his house.
He's going to bring David in and have him get married.
Yeah.
Sort of. What's his real motive?
So keep an eye on him.
Get rid of him, he really wants to get rid of him.
He actually wants to get rid of him. He's actually still plotting to get rid of him. Karen?
Didn't he promise that to whoever killed Goliath
Yeah.
would get his wife, his daughter?
Yes, that was a part of what they were saying would happen if whoever kills Goliath would marry the daughter of the king, the princess. And to this point, Saul's not acted on that. Now he starts to act on that. But what does David say? Verse 18. Yeah. Who am I? And who are my relatives, my father's clan in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? What's David saying here?
That he's a nobody and he doesn't really deserve that.
He wasn't
Okay.
worthy.
He's not worthy.
He's not
He's
bringing
wondering
anything to the
why.
table.
He's not bringing anything to the table. Yeah, we'll see some more about that here in a minute.
And he's wondering why to a certain
He's not
extent.
doing it for the rewards.
Okay? He's not ready for this level of society, is he?
No.
He's not prepared for all of that. It'd be intimidating, wouldn't it?
I think he'd rather go back to being a shepherd.
He wants to go back to being a shepherd? Well, it doesn't say that directly. He's having lots of success as a soldier, isn't he?
Yeah.
But being a soldier is different from being a politician and a socialite. Those are two different things, very different things. David doesn't see himself as ready, and then Saul pulls the rug out from under him anyway, doesn't he? And he sends the first daughter to Adriel the Meholathite. Let's read on, though. Let's see what's next here. Verses 20 to 22. 20 to 22. Ladies in particular, pay attention.
Now Saul's daughter Michal loved David, and they told Saul the thing that pleased him. Saul thought, "Let me give her to him, that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." Therefore Saul said to David a second time, "You shall now be my son-in-law." And Saul commanded his servants, "Speak to David in private and say, Behold, the king has delight in you, and all his servants love you. Now then, become the king's son-in-law."
Okay. So they move to the second daughter. How's Michal feel about David? She loves him. She loves him. She's fallen for David. He must have been a sight as he's progressing this way. Ladies, I want you to put yourself in the princess's sandals for a minute. Okay? Go there in your mind. Get decked out like a princess. Okay? And think about what's happening here between Saul and his daughters.
He's using them.
He's using them, isn't he? He's using these girls.
To try to snare David and.
Yeah.
Pimping him out.
Say it again?
That's true, you're right on.
He's pimping them out.
He's pimping them out?
Yes,
Is that-
yes. In layman's terms.
Pastor's
Oh, my word. Oh, my goodness.
Well, I was
Yeah.
trying to think of a way to say that, but
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, there's such a thing as arranged marriage, right? And that's common in Israel at this time.
Wasn't David supposed to get the oldest daughter though?
Well, you would think that there would have been that with the defeat of Goliath,
Right.
that would have happened, but it doesn't. Saul's in there manipulating around. And David's backing off, isn't he? He's like, he's not ready for this. He doesn't want to be part of it. But now the king comes forward to David and says, I'm arranging this marriage. And you're going to be married to my daughter. But the whole time,
He's scheming.
he's scheming, despite whatever his daughter may feel or think. Right? Despite the love that she has in her heart for David, despite all of that, Saul is doing this scheming.
Therefore pimping out.
Yeah. Arranged marriage is not the same as pimping, okay? It's not the same thing.
well, he had more than, he had them lined up and they was
You
in
line them
the-
up.
Right,
Even by proxy, it's not the same.
Oh. There are still many cultures that practice arranged marriage.
to this day.
India in particular
Yeah.
is well known for arranged marriages. And it seems to be working in their culture. It's hard for us to imagine.
Yes.
We haven't had this since about the Middle Ages. That's when romantic ideals come into Western thought. And we give ourselves, we marry for love. We tell ourselves in ancient times, you didn't do that. You listened to your family, and the family made the arrangement, and it was much more of a economic situation. Because if you're living hand to mouth, just getting by, the bread is just as, the bread's just as important as how he looks.
Yeah.
Okay, under those circumstances. Yeah, go ahead.
Look how the kings of Europe did.
True.
Yeah, the arranged marriage, yeah. But in Western culture, the ideal has become romantic marriage. So this seems a little weird to us. It's not the same as pimping, okay? Go ahead.
Well, it sounds to me too, like when he said she would be a snare, that maybe you can have just 2 children or 10 children. There's always one that's a little bit harder to raise than the others. So maybe that's why he chose her.
You think she's the problem child?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael's going to come up later. We're going to see some more about her later. They do get married. We're going to see here that David and Michael get married. She is David's first wife. Not his only wife. And that leads to, those are other complications, right? Other complications that come up in Israel. But yeah, imagine being the daughter of the king that is scheming like this. How terrible.
Or the younger daughter, even still. What's going to become of them? The younger.
Since the word snares come up, is that like a trap for David?
Yeah, he's looking to trap David. Let's read on, we're going to see how he's going to do it. Okay, verses 23, let's see, 23 to 27, and I will read it. And Saul's servant spoke those words in the ears of David, and David said, "Does it seem to you a little thing to become the king's son-in-law? Since I am a poor man and have no reputation." That's what Karen was referring to. And the servants of Saul told him, "Thus and so did David speak." Then Saul said, "Thus shall you say to David, the king desires no bride price." Okay, he's worried about how poor he is. No bride price except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged of the king's enemies. Now Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. You see the snare, you see the trap that he's laying there. And you see how brutal this culture is, right?
Right.
In American frontier life, they would take scalps. In Israel, and perhaps among the others of this culture of this time,
Foreskin.
Oy.
They still cook scalps.
they're cutting something else off, okay? That's just weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's just kind of weird.
If you need glasses, that was bad.
Oh my gosh. That is just a weird situation, but that's the snare, that's the trap that Saul is setting for David. He thinks he's going to go out to battle and get himself killed in the fight. Folks, we're going to have to stop there. It's kind of a weird place to, well, it's a weird thing to read at any rate.
Give us something to think about all week.
Yeah, I wouldn't dwell on this in particular. Let's bow our heads in a prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the way that you guide and bless your servants, and for giving your Holy Spirit to your servant David to fulfill his mission and his purpose and your plan for the leadership of Israel. We ask, O Lord our God, that our hearts and our minds would always be attuned to your Spirit and to your word. We would follow in your ways, not act in jealousy, not act in anger, not act in envy, but have hearts stayed by the Lord and his word. Through Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen.